Hello there and welcome back to my channel. My name is LaNesha and I love to help primary educators master their writing block, feel empowered and competent when it comes to teaching writing. Today's question is, help, my students simply hate to write. What do I do about that? If you've ever been in a classroom and you have announced to the class that it was time to write and the entire class goes, ah, and you hear a big groan, then this video is for you. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. If you didn't already, please go ahead and tap that subscribe button. I would so appreciate it. If this video is helpful to you, go ahead and send it to your friends, your colleagues, and let's make writing everybody's favorite subject to teach. I think we can do it. All right, so let's get into this idea of students hating writing. And if I'm being honest with you, I hated writing. I did. Growing up, I hated writing. And then when I first became a teacher, I hated writing. For me, it was because I wasn't really taught how to teach writing very well. Didn't have a college course on it. Never really saw it done well. And so when it came time for me to teach a bunch of kids to write, I approximated like what I thought would be effective, and when it quickly flopped, and I thought all the kids were reliant on me for every single thing. They wanted to know how to spell everything. They couldn't think of any ideas. They wouldn't write longer than a minute or one sentence. And I quickly was like, you know what? I'm just not going to teach writing. It's fine. It was not fine, because writing is a huge piece of their literacy experience. And if we are neglecting like the other half of reading, then the kids are missing out. And so I really wanted to learn how to teach writing well. I developed this program called REIMAGINE Writing. It's what I call a process first framework. Every single thing that I do goes through the writing process, but I also care about the writers as authors, people who write, people who want to live a writerly life. I do. I care about that. And so I do try to take time to nurture both sides of a writer. And so today's video, what do you do when you have kids that hate writing? Here are the reasons that I think children hate writing. Reason number one, they have writing anxiety. We've acronymed them to death. I'm going to put some links to some videos that kind of get at some of the things that I'm going to talk about here, but we acronym them to death. We give them a million different hamburger paragraphs, Oreo paragraphs, cops, cups, arms, rate, races, all these millions of acronyms, and they don't know what to do with them, or they might get really good at that and they might think that that's all writing is, and they don't know how to transfer it over to different writing tasks in their life, or they're just told to respond to a prompt with not a lot of guidance and no real understanding of text structure and what sorts of things go in different kinds of writing. That is a lot. Writing is a very complex task, and a lot of children simply do not know how to navigate the waters of writing. And so making sure that they have a strong foundation with the writing process and exactly what needs to happen on each step is going to be really helpful. And like I said, I will include video tags and cards and things. If you want to see more about those topics, then definitely go check that out. But for me, that was a huge reason why a lot of kids did not like writing, because they were lost. The second reason is a lot of them think writing is only responding to a prompt, pulling out the composition notebook, writing something that somebody may or may not ever look at, or it's sitting in a workshop and like writing something that I'm not super proud of. I don't really feel confident in it. And they think that's all writing is, or they think it's responding to test prompts. Like most of the writing is like, we're going to use the RACE strategy and learn how to respond to a test prompt. Really, the only time we do writing is if we're getting ready for a test, and they think that's all writing is. And to me, that is tragic. I want students to know that there are so many different kinds of writing in the world, and they all have their place and they are all important. There are some times where you are going to show up as a writer that tells stories. There's other times you're going to be a writer that provides information. You might be a researcher. You might be a writer that's trying to persuade people and you're writing speeches. I want writers to know that there are so many different ways that you can show up, and that writing really does play a very important part in the world. And a lot of children are missing this memo. A lot of educators are missing this memo because, tunnel vision, I get it. We have a test coming up and, the skills aren't there. So we have to focus on something else for reading or for math. And we're neglecting the writing, and it is not serving anybody well, because writing, there's so much research around how writing actually makes you a stronger reader, and it makes you stronger in other academic areas. And so I'm just on this mission to really make sure that people know how important writing is, especially for our young learners. And so it is really important to me that children have a general foundation of the process of writing so they understand what is expected of them. It's also important to me that they understand things like text structure and genre, and that there are times where I'm going to show up and I am going to have to do a test prep response. And that's okay, because that's not all writing is. That's just the kind of writing that we're doing at this moment in time. Then that will move on and I will learn how to do something else, like write a poem or an article or an essay or a book or whatever it is. That is how I want my students to come to the understanding of writing. Because if they think that writing is just the prompt, read 2 sources and compare the text and include 3 details. And I'm not saying anything is wrong with that. They need to be able to do that. But I am saying something is wrong if that is their only understanding of what writing is, because then they're immediately going to hate that. All right. Maybe some kids will love it, but most kids will see a task like that and immediately want nothing to do with it because it's hard, it's complex. They don't know how to do it. They don't have the strategies and the tools that they need, unless they're taught a very specific formula that you can follow, where we're all using the same opening line and we're all going to use the same transition words, and all we have to do is kind of fill in the blank to get something down. A lot of kids may not really connect to that for the art of writing. And so I just firmly believe in taking care of both sides of the writer, the mechanics, the skill-based lessons. All those things are so obviously important. I don't think we need to convince anybody of that importance. We do need to convince people of the fact that children need to feel a connection to writing. Students need to feel as though they actually are writers, because the moment they identify as a writer, then they can access those skills, those strategies, the things that they need in order to become somebody that is comfortable with writing. It's so important that that happens. So for me, that is one huge reason why kids don't like writing. Another reason is, especially in primary, writing does not feel like making. Writing in a lot of classes feels like, oh, I have to get my pencil. Okay, here we go. And then my paper, and my teacher's saying every 5 seconds, I didn't put space in my words, and I didn't put a capital letter, and I didn't spell this word right. And it is not fun. And if you're a kindergarten student and you're still learning how your body works and you're still trying to figure out life and school, that is a very difficult task. So I believe writing needs to be a little more hands-on. I want writing to feel fun. I want writing to feel like making. So if we're writing in a kindergarten or a first grade class, or honestly, even second, third, like the upper grades, I want this to feel very hands-on. I am a published author. I've got some books right back up there. I wrote all those, illustrated them, or designed them. And when I was creating those books, my office was a wreck. There were papers everywhere. I've got crayons and markers out because I'm putting this vision together that I have in my mind, and I want to see it come to life. I didn't just sit at my computer and, hammer it out. I had sticky notes. I had notes on my phone. I'm pulling different pieces everywhere. It was a messy process, and it very much felt like making. Why would we expect kindergarten and first grade students to just write a single sentence on a line and then that's writing, right? No, I want this thing to feel like we are creating something. I always use the example of when you watch high school shows or college shows and there's the school newspaper, and anytime they go into that scene, I love the hum. I love the buzz in the high school newspaper room. It's someone's typing and then they rip a paper off the printer and they wheel back in the chair and hand it to someone else and then they do something with it. That's the vibe that I want to see in my workshop when it's little kids. I want to see them putting papers together and then, making corrections and edits and cutting a picture out because they messed the words up and they want to try again. I want them to glue that picture onto another paper and try the words again because they're problem solvers and they know they can show up as a writer, and it is a safe space to get what they need to get done. That's what I'm after. Okay, that's what I love. And so making writing hands-on. So I'll show you here just an example of what writing kind of looks like in my classroom. I've got writing units that are all designed in that way, where there's a product that we are all creating. And after we go, through the writing process, we are all trying to create a product that might be a letter, it might be an article, it might be a journal, it might be a book of poetry, an anthology of poetry. Whatever it is, we are actively working toward that thing. And I'm going to show them how to get through the writing process, literally and physically get through the writing process. And so once I show them all of those things, writing becomes a very hands-on on experience. It becomes an experience that kids look forward to. I would get kids who would walk into my classroom. I say this all the time. They'd walk into my classroom in kindergarten, and instead of doing my morning buckets, they would just say, Mrs. Tab, can I just get my writing folder? Because I'm trying to get to the next step of the writing process. I know exactly what I want to do, and I'm really excited to get there. And I'd be like, you sure can. You don't need to do that little morning bucket. Go get your writing folder and have at it. And I would have these kids rocking and rolling when it came to writing because they understood it. It was developmentally appropriate because they were hands-on. It was physical. And they were really successful. So if that's something that you're like, ooh, I want to know more about that, a couple different options here. One, I always put my comprehensive blog post for how I run my writing workshop in the description box below. You can also check out my lessons for launching unit if you want a very specific way for how to roll out a writing workshop in your classroom that is very hands-on and follows the same structure. Then make sure you check that out. And no matter what you decide to do, think about whether or not the things that you are asking your students to do really are developmentally appropriate for the grade level that you are teaching, and how can you make it feel more hands-on. The last strategy that I will offer up is this idea of, once we have created whatever we're creating for writing, what happens to it? Like, if we're going to publish it. So in my writing process, we always say we're going to send our work out into the world. Okay, but then like what happens? It has to be really frustrating to be a student that spends all this time working on this writing piece and pouring your heart into it, and then the teacher collects it, he puts it on his desk in a basket, and it just dies a very sad death there in the basket. It sits there for maybe the next couple weeks because the teacher didn't have time to get to it, and then eventually one day it magically appears in my cubby, and I take it home and hope that I can get one of the grown-ups in my house to maybe look at it, but the teacher didn't have time to look at it, and my parents didn't really. So I've just received a message that, okay, this writing really wasn't that important. So, and listen, I've been a teacher for 18 years, so I'm not knocking by any means the teacher for like not getting to something, because I'm the queen of having stacks of papers all over my desk and I didn't have time to grade them. And I'm like, yikes, I'll just put a check mark on them and send it home. Sorry. So it's not that. My point is, what can we put in place to make sure that all of their writing feels like it is going to live beyond the basket on the teacher's desk? So there are a couple ideas and things that I like to think about whenever I'm jumping into writing. The first question I always ask myself is, whatever writing we're doing, whatever the genre is, how does this kind of writing show up in the real world? And if it shows up in the real world in a way that I can emulate in my classroom, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to show my students where we're going. So let's say we're in a poetry unit and I'm like, how does poetry show up in the real world? Poetry shows up when Amanda Gorman read that amazing poem at the inauguration a few years ago. Okay, cool. So poetry shows up there, and poetry shows up at a coffee house where they have open mic nights, and poetry shows up. And I'm thinking about, in real life, where does poetry live? Is it a blog? Is it a website? And I'm going to pick something and I'm going to make that the goal for my class. So I'm going to say, okay, we are doing a poetry unit, and over the next 4 weeks, we're going to write so many poems. It's going to be so exciting. We're going to organize them. We're going to turn them into a class anthology. And then we are going to have an open mic night where your families can come in and your grown-ups can come support you and hear your writing. So do you see what I'm doing? So instead of it just being like, okay, collect the papers, put them in my desk, I'll grade them and give it back to you. Now the students know this thing is going somewhere. And it doesn't have to be as dramatic as an open mic night and invite, the grown-ups to come in. It can literally be, ask the classroom next door to come over for the open mic night. It can even be, we're writing informational articles in the classroom on animals, and we're going to turn this thing into a class magazine. And I need to put my class in different teams, and I need to say, you guys are responsible for designing the magazine cover, and you guys are responsible for all the advertisements in the magazine, because we have a bake sale coming up, we have a school dance, so I want to see advertisements in the magazine, and you guys are responsible for the table of contents. So you have to organize everybody's articles in a way that makes sense. And so I've got this whole classroom making, and they love it. And they feel like their writing is going somewhere. They didn't just write an animal report and turn it in, or even have the teacher staple it on the wall and like a couple people walk by and see it. And that's nice. I'm not knocking that. But why stop there when you can really show them that their writing can be so impactful? So one year, I did that with the informational magazine, and I had kids designing front covers, and I had kids designing, table of contents and advertisements and all the things. Put it all together. I went and photocopied it. I made multiple copies. I put a copy in the front office. I put a copy in the teacher workroom. And then again, I've said this in other videos, but an important part, email the school and say, please, please, please pick that magazine up, pick a few of my students. And if you see them in the hallway in passing, stop them and say, oh my gosh, I loved your article on cheetahs. That was so amazing. And your coworkers, they'll do it. And the kids feel so important and they really feel like their writing matters. The last idea I'm going to share is this idea of a publishing party. So look at this image right here. So if you don't feel like doing the absolute most, at the very least, what I like to do is kind of have just a quick publishing party to celebrate the hard work done during a marked amount of time for writing. And we just kind of come together and we celebrate. So you can see here some of the things that I like to include in my publishing parties. And this is a publishing pack that is available in the Reimagine Writing program. Everything you see in any of my videos is all available in one program, one-time purchase. If you want to see more about that, be sure to check the links in the description box below. But you can see here in my publishing parties, I'm going to have a cute little author booth set up, and they've got little props that they can take pictures, and I'll set up a little corner in the classroom, and it says things like hashtag published author or, hashtag author life. There's little mustaches and hats and things like that. And they just have a good time. It's like party vibes, right? I put a little music on. I'm going to give them sentence starters to talk to each other about their writing. So it's going to say things like, I love how you blank, or one thing I noticed is blank. And I coach them up on that. How do we read someone else's writing and give them feedback and give them compliments on it? You can, if you wanted to invite families in, we've got little templates in there for notes for the author. So if your grown-ups do come in, they can leave notes for different authors in the classroom. And then of course there's an opportunity for self-reflection in there as well. So during the party, I might have them all fill out a self-reflection for how they felt about their writing. And then just little fun things like, again, I'm asking myself, what do authors do in the real world after they have published something? They let their friends know. Their friends congratulate them. They might hold a book party, like a book signing party. Maybe they give away free bookmarks, right? So I'm thinking about those things. So there's little things in there like a bookmark template where I might let them color a couple bookmarks, cut them out, put them on their desk, and as kids are going around and sharing their writing with each other, then maybe they can swap bookmarks. And so it doesn't have to be dramatic, but it really is important because you want the students to understand my writing doesn't stop here. My writing really does go beyond, my desk, the teacher's desk, and my backpack. I really am sending this out into the world, and it really does matter. So hopefully those ideas resonated. If you have any questions about writing that you would love to see answered, please make sure you leave a comment below. We put out new videos every Tuesday and Thursday. We check those comments very closely. And if it's a question that I feel like I can answer, I would love to feature it in an upcoming video. It'll be anonymous, so don't stress out or anything like that. I never say who asked the question, but I would love to, just share some ideas and strategies because this is what I do. I love to talk about writing, and it is just something that really brings me joy. So if you did not already, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, click the bell, make sure you don't miss any videos because we'll be back every Tuesday, every Thursday to talk more about writing, and I will see you in the next one.